Hi everyone! Today we'll be talking about one of my favorite artists, as you may be able to tell from the shirt. We are talking about David Bowie. Now I've had the pleasure of listening to his catalog all week to come up with the absolute best. I'm calling this, Undeniably, the top 10 best Bowie songs. And for a little bit of fun, I'll have a song that I consider overrated at the end, just to stir it up. But in the meantime, let's get to the top 10. Coming in at number 10, we have Young Americans from the album of the same name. Now, after being the head of the glam rock class for several years, Bowie wanted to go in a different direction and became enamored with the funk soul sound into the 70s, specifically the Philly soul sound, and decided he wanted to settle down in a Philadelphia studio and record an album of what he termed to be plastic soul. He was hoping that Gamble and Huff, the team behind the MFSB, or the Philly soul sound at the time, would be part of the backing band for this album, but unfortunately they weren't available. He was, however, able to get Carlos Alomar, who would become an integral part of Bowie's sound throughout the 70s. He is the guitar sound that you think of when you think of David Bowie in the 70s, and recruiting him for Young Americans was a huge step in his career. Young Americans itself is kind of an underbaked album. Even though it's only 8 songs, it kind of is all over the place. It has 2 certified hits in both Young Americans and Fame, and then the rest of the album is a bit wishy-washy. The cover of Across the Universe that even includes John Lennon is pretty forgettable, which is kind of a crime when you have 2 talents like that in the same room. The title track is still a radio staple today, thanks to its epic sax solo, probably the best in rock music, and the backup vocals that were arranged at the time by a young Luther Vandross. The groove is infectious, and it just rides that groove the entire time, with the congas and the drums just really pulling it along. This was Bowie's big breakthrough into the US. He was already big in the UK after Ziggy Stardust, but was barely making waves in the US at the time, so this was his big arrival. Riding that infectious groove with those unforgettable backup vocals, alright, it was a big smash hit. And the lyrics were a touchstone of the time, referencing Nixon, McCarthyism, and the Beatles, and seemed relevant and fresh. The lyrics about a young newlywed couple finding their footing in a changing country really hit home for many listeners. It has one of the all-time best breakdowns when the music stops and Bowie just says, "Ain't no one damn song that'll make me break down and cry." And then you hear the drums come back and they bring back the chorus one final time. With Young Americans, Bowie finally had his breakthrough, and he created an anthem that still rings true today. Coming in at number 9, we have TVC-15 from Station to Station. Now chronologically, Station to Station does follow Young Americans. Bowie bounced from the plastic soul that defined Young Americans to the icy textures that was Station to Station. Many would call this a transitional album. Bowie came up with the idea of a thin white dude, his new persona, introduced in the title track of the album, throwing darts into lovers' eyes. It was a big departure from the previous album. He was now influenced by krautrock and electronic music. After the success of Young Americans, he was given a lot of room to experiment on this album. This album was the epitome of art rock, and would launch the art rock that would soon define Bowie's career. What starts with the upbeat barroom piano is soon swallowed by the drones of electric guitar swirling around the melody. Guitar riffs randomly fill the fringes, and there are periodically bursts of saxophone that appear out of nowhere. And it seems disjointed, but somehow still sticks together. And the lyrics of the narrator's girlfriend being eaten by a TV is truly surreal and otherworldly. It was progressive rock without being self-indulgent or gratuitous. It was definitely an attempt to create something new. TVC-15 would announce David Bowie as the new czar of art rock and change the course of his career forever. It is a purposely weird and innovative jam. Coming in at number 8, we have the first track from the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, 5 years. From now on, I will refer to that album as Ziggy Stardust without saying the full title again, just so you know. Now, Ziggy Stardust is a concept album based on this idea of a bisexual alien who is the savior who comes to save the planet Earth. And it barely holds together coherently. 5 Years leans heavily into this narrative. It starts off with the newscast explaining how there's only 5 years left on this planet. And the rest of the lyrics are the characters reacting to this crazy news. In the mythos of Ziggy Stardust, he's supposed to be the savior who comes and saves the Earth through his music. 5 Years starts to set the scene of the album. It starts off calmly with a kick drum beat of a heartbeat fading into the song. As the newscasters explain that there's only 5 years left, the song grows and grows in intensity as the characters grapple with the aftermath of learning this news. While Bowie could write some amazing choruses, 5 Years has no chorus at all. In fact, it's more like a tuneful Bob Dylan-esque type song, where it tells a story and tries to draw you in with all of the details of it. The song's intensity just builds and builds as they learn the news and think about what it means, until it erupts into shouts of 5 years at the end. They couldn't believe they only have 5 years, so all they could do is shout about it. The shouts turn into screams, and then it just fades out as they have to deal with the news. 5 Years is both somehow apocalyptic, but yet not without hope. It's a stunning statement to open one of his seminal works. Coming in at number 7, we have Diamond Dogs from the album of the same name. This is another first song as long as you don't count the spoken word intro that comes before it. Now, Diamond Dogs is the last of David Bowie's glam rock days. He started to incorporate funk and soul within the album, and you could imagine that he kind of got tired with what he had done before. It begins with one of the all-time best opening lines of any song. "This ain't rock and roll, this is genocide." It's just an awesome way to kick off a song. It then launches into a Rolling Stones-esque blues shuffle complete with sax and guitar. It sounds like the most fun you could have during an apocalypse. It wouldn't be David Bowie if he didn't roll out another alter ego, and this time it's Halloween Jack, who introduces us to the world of Diamond Dogs. Diamond Dogs themselves are a street gang in this dystopian world that kind of prey on the innocent people that are still left. The word is that Bowie wanted to create and write a TV series based on the book 1984. George Orwell's daughter denied him that right. So he decided to take those themes and incorporate them within Diamond Dogs. If Ziggy Stardust was a loose concept album that just kind of had snapshots of the character, Diamond Dogs is somehow even looser, with its cut and paste William Burroughs themes barely being part of the fabric of the album. Bowie hardly even tries to hold together its patchwork themes. The title track acts as a final victory lap of his glam rock days. It's like he couldn't let the moment pass without a final celebration. Diamond Dogs, despite its heavy literary references, just sounds like a trashy, fun party. And it's a hell of a way to kick off an album. At number 6, we have Time from Aladdin Sane. Now, after the success of Ziggy Stardust, Bowie was apprehensive about being pigeonholed as Ziggy Stardust. So he decided once again to create an alter ego. This time he came up with Aladdin Sane, which is a pun on Alad Insane. He would later call Aladdin Sane Ziggy Stardust Goes to America. To me, Aladdin Sane is the sister album to Ziggy Stardust. They're really the absolute pillars of glam rock. Time is a schizophrenic cabaret song, led by Bowie's theatrical vocals and Mick Garson's almost vaudevillian piano. It has Bowie's vocals front and center like he's some kind of carnival barker. It starts calmly with the pianos and the vocals, until the guitars are introduced and really ratchet up the gear of the song. The bass and drums are underappreciated, but really accent the dynamics of the song. It starts from that wandering piano until it builds into the shouts and screams of the chorus. While Time was decked out in glam rock, it would foreshadow the art rock that would soon define David Bowie's career. It sounds like a circus sideshow that has to be seen to be believed. And it's a song that only David Bowie could make. Coming in at number 5, we have Moon Age Daydream from Ziggy Stardust. Now, if you like your Bowie more rock and roll than arty, chances are Ziggy Stardust is your favorite album. Some of Bowie's best songs are on the album, and they absolutely kill. Moon Age Daydream is one of the defining songs on the album. It introduces our space hero, Ziggy Stardust. The song starts with an absolute lightning bolt from guitarist Mick Ronson. It's Ronson's guitar work and string arrangement that really make the song a true classic. A few years earlier, Bowie formed a band called Arnold Corns, who would do a psychedelic pop version of the song. Listening to that song now, you would never know that it would become the classic it is now. The strummy T-Rex boogie continues to add these guitar bursts as it moves toward the sax solo played by Bowie himself. From there, it continues to build, adding these cinematic strings, and then it has some weird phasing panning effects to really accent freaking out in a Moon Age Daydream. Rather than telling Ronson what to play during the solo, Bowie drew a shape and directed Ronson to play based off that shape. Somehow, Ronson was able to interpret that and create an absolutely legendary solo that brings the song home, enveloped in screeching strings that sound out of this world. Ronson was a big reason why this freakout is a work of art. At number 4, we have Changes from Hunky Dory. Now, Changes is one of the most famous songs Bowie has now, but back then it wasn't that big of a hit. Space Oddity had been a minor hit in the UK, but Bowie wasn't thought of as some kind of rising star. However, with Hunky Dory, it really announced Bowie as someone to be reckoned with. Changes, like most of the album, is primarily piano-driven, and the piano on the album was played by Rick Wakeman, who would later join Yes. Rick Wakeman is a virtuoso piano player, and the piano parts on the album are top-notch. Changes is self-referential. Bowie had been told many times to change his sound to suit the style of the times, so he felt like he was always reinventing himself. This is where Bowie would later become known as the chameleon of rock music. While the lyrics are personal, he's a smart enough lyricist to also include universal themes, like the generational divide between parents and their children. These children that you spit on as they try to change their world. It's a great hook for any young listener going through their own personal journeys and rebelling against authority. It's a timeless feeling. It sounds upbeat in the face of uncertainty, embracing the strange and ready for the challenges ahead. At number 3, it's Space Oddity from the album of the same name, also known as David Bowie. Space Oddity was the big hit Bowie was looking for, following the commercial failure of his first album. Inspired by the space race in 2001 Space Odyssey, Bowie dreamed up a story about an astronaut, Major Tom, who goes into space where his equipment malfunctions and he is destined to perish as he watches the Earth from afar. Originally, they tried to get George Martin, the Beatles producer, to produce this album. He declined. Even the producer that Bowie got for the album as a whole, Tony Visconti, who he would later work with a lot, declined to produce Space Oddity, calling the song a novelty record. The song is so omnipresent now, it's hard to imagine listening to it and not thinking it was already a classic. It's a weird, psychedelic freakout, filled with a story arc full of different styles to tell a cinematic tale of space travel. The use of a stylophone, an instrument meant for children, really accents its otherworldliness, and the mellotron adds to the spaciness of the song. The liftoff segment really emulates the sound of a rocket launch, and the strings creates an ambience of floating around in your tin can. In general, the orchestration really adds to the feeling of this sci-fi epic. The lyrics hint at alienation. Bowie talked about how technology seemed to take the humanism out of the science, and it really fits the drama of the story. Space Oddity came out of nowhere and introduced us to the alien talent of David Bowie. At number 2, we have Heroes from the album of the same name. Heroes is a Cold War art rock anthem that feels like it could have only been created in a divided Berlin. Heroes is part of the Berlin trilogy that also includes Low and Lodger. Like Low, half of the songs were pop songs while half were ambient experiments. Producer Brian Eno and Bowie worked to push the boundaries of what rock music could be. They decided to enlist the help of Robert Fripp, formerly of King Crimson, to help color the songs. The droning squall of the guitars and synths wash over, while Bowie's urgent vocals really take center stage in the song, starting from almost a conversation until erupting into shouts later in the song. At the time, Bowie had just came back from producing one of Iggy Pop's records, and he was obsessed with Iggy's method of creating lyrics on the spot. So he decided to do the same with Heroes. He created the song that day while recording. Reportedly, he saw Tony Visconti, the producer, sharing a kiss at the Berlin Wall, which could be seen from the studio. What followed was an almost nihilistic love song framed by the uncertainty of the Cold War. We could be heroes just for one day. Even with the bullets raining down, the heroes of our story choose love. It's art rock at its most accessible, and Bowie's howling by the end is his most visceral. Meant to be in quotations to show the irony, the song nevertheless persists on this feeling of triumph. While Heroes was hardly a big single at the time, it continues to be an enduring anthem of everlasting hope against our predetermined fate. At number 1, we have Life on Mars off Hunky Dory. Now, the backstory of Life on Mars is a little strange, and it involves Frank Sinatra, of all people. Bowie had been commissioned to write lyrics to this French song. Of course, when he wrote those lyrics, they were later turned down. A few months later, Paul Anka bought the rights to the song, rewrote the lyrics, and came up with the song My Way, which would later become one of Frank Sinatra's biggest hits. Bowie was furious at the time and decided to write a parody song based off that. The song starts off with the same chord progression and does sound like an old school crooner ballad before turning into this soaring, cinematic epic. Bowie has obliquely called it a love song, but it feels so more mysterious and surreal, telling the story of a young girl who wants to escape reality, so she retreats to the world of movies. The melody is yearning. Even with somewhat purposefully obtuse lyrics, it's so passionate that it invites the listener to project their own feelings onto the lyrics. Rick Wakeman once again plays piano on the piece, and it's a masterclass. But we also have to point to Mick Ronson, where it was his first string arrangement, and it's really the string arrangement along with the orchestral work that brings the song to dizzying heights. Famously, Bowie recorded his vocals in one take, and it is a tour de force of his talent. Inspired by the space race, Life on Mars is the sound of David Bowie's career launching off, and it's a captivating achievement. And now I'd like to add 2 songs that are really good, but just missed out on the top 10. First off is Starman. At some point, I have to choose which Ziggy Stardust song doesn't make the album, but Starman could definitely be argued for being as good as anything in the top 10. Its chorus just soars above the clouds, and it paints a great picture of a young listener encountering the otherworldly sounds of Ziggy Stardust. And the other song is Fame. While most of Young Americans isn't so good, Fame was the first number 1 that David Bowie actually had in the US. Propelled by Carlos Alomar's funky riff, it was a riff that was so indebted to James Brown that James Brown himself would rip off that very song years later. It's the funkiest song that David Bowie's ever made and his best dance song. Unfortunately, those 2 are just below the top 10. As you're still watching, I figured I'd like to share a deep cut. With an artist that had a catalog as long as David's was, it's easy to overlook later albums in his career. Some of them just aren't that great, and they can range from overindulgent to just uninteresting. However, I'd like to spotlight the 2002 album Heathen. With David Bowie already at 55 years old, he decided to re-team with Tony Visconti and create one of the great late albums of his career. Some of the best songs off Heathen, Afraid and Slip Away, were meant for an album called Toy, which Bowie had worked with Visconti on previous to Heathen. It was meant to be released as songs that Bowie had left earlier in his career, but decided to redo. Unfortunately, that album wouldn't be released until after his death. He decided to take those songs and redo them for Heathen. Afraid really fits in with songs earlier in his career. It's an assured riff rocker with a great string section that really accents the dynamics of the song, with lyrics that talk about pulling yourselves up and facing an uncertain world. It's an overlooked classic that should be revisited. And now I bring you the most overrated David Bowie song, and that's Blue Jean from Tonight. Now, I don't hear this song as much anymore, so perhaps culturally this is kind of done with at this point, but it did make both Changes Bowie and The Best of Bowie, so someone decided that this stacks along Bowie's greatest hits, and to me that is just clearly not the case. Bowie talked about not playing for the gallery and not playing for this big audience. But to me, the sound of Blue Jean is him doing just that. It's a song any artist in the 80s could have done. Without Bowie's unmistakable voice, it would just be another song lost in the 80s shuffle. It sounds like something that you'd hear at a mall or in a commercial. It has almost nothing unique that sounds like David Bowie. The chorus is barely there. The sax just recalls other, better David Bowie songs. And whoever decided that laconic backup vocals was a good sound really should have thought twice. For a constantly evolving artist, Blue Jean proves that even the great ones can get stuck in a rut. So there you have it. That was undeniably the top 10 best David Bowie songs. So how wrong was I? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you actually think that Blue Jean is underrated? Let me know. And if there's any artist you'd like to see me rank, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you, and I have plenty more opinions to share. I hope you come back, and thank you for watching. Five years is a pop formed a band. A few years earlier, Bowie formed a band called Enveloped. Yeah, it sounds upbeat in the face of uncertainty. It sounds upbeat in the face of uncertainty. Uncertainty. Yeah. With life on damn it. Okay. All right. I think I'm good. Keep going. Inspired by the space race, life on Mars launched the career of David Bowie. Okay. No, I already did it. It's fine.